When Kim and I were first married, we lived in a very small apartment. One gift we were given one summer was our pastor would go away to Idaho. They had a cabin there. Their family would all meet from around the country, and they'd spend a couple weeks there. So he invited us to stay in his house and house sit. Now, when you live in a little apartment, you get to live in a big home. We got to play house. They had a pool, barbecue. It was really awesome. There was only one thing that was off, and that was they had a cat. Now, I'm not an anti-cat person, but my wife is highly allergic to cats. And so we tried to endure it. We kept the slider open and just tried to enjoy the kind of beautiful summer weather. But we decided we'd keep our bedroom door. We were sleeping in the guest room downstairs. We keep that bedroom door closed to make sure that the cat could not get in. A few days into our stay, Kim and I noticed when we go to bed at night that how do I say this? The room smelt musky. We didn't want to say anything because we kind of assumed it was the other person. And so newly married, not wanting to offend, just advice, you just don't ask those things or say those things, but you just started to realize something doesn't smell right in the room. As the days went on, it got worse and worse, and we just finally admitted, hey, something's off. What is that smell in this room? We couldn't figure it out for the life of us until one night. It was the middle of the night. I think it was around 4 a.m. And it's pitch black in the room. And my wife is half asleep, half awake. And she just feels like we're not alone. And then she feels something across her face, just kind of a slight little tickle that just kind of goes across her face like this. And am I dreaming? Is this like a spiritual attack? Like, she doesn't know what's going on. I'm dead asleep through the whole thing. But finally I wake up because the lights are on, and I kid you not, imagine waking up to this. You wake up, your wife is kneeling at the edge of your bed, and she's got this I don't even know how she found a long stick. There's something in the room, a broom or something. She's got this stick and she is holding it like a weapon, and she's looking right at the window. I'm like, what are you doing? What is going on? I just think she's sleepwalking or something weird is going on. I'm just kind of trying. She's like, it's right there. And I don't know what's going on. I'm like, what is there? She goes, I don't know. I don't know if it's a demon. I don't know there's something right there. And so I walk over to the window and I go, where? Right here. And I pull up the shade, and right there, this possum just kind of reaches out screaming. That's what I see. And both of us just go, ah! Like just the highest pitched loud scream. And in one motion, we just run, grab our keys, run out the door, shut the door, get in the car, drive back. What was that? The whole thing. Now she's describing to me how it was walking across our bed, its tail going across her face. And we're just, right? We're just, the whole thing. So what we came to learn, what we called animal control, was if you have cats, chances are you're gonna get possums because the baby possums like to come in and eat the cat food. Well, while we were keeping everything open, a possum came in. While we were keeping our door shut, we actually scared a possum into our room, locked it in. It was living there for days with us in there. So fast forward, we're now homeowners and we have teenage kids. And it's summertime, and our boys would sit in our garage. We kind of made it like a little, like a teenage game room. They're in there playing video games, and I walk in the garage and I smell it. I'm like, you know how you sometimes smell something and your memories take you back? And I'm like, I know this smell. And my first thought is, it's a room full of teenage boys. Of course it smells musky, right? And I'm like, no, I know this smell. I'm like, guys, I think something's in here with you. I think something, because I had asked the boys each night, they would crack open the garage door so they have some air in there. I'm like, we're going to bed. Just when you guys go to bed, just please close everything. And like good teenagers, they ignored everything that we said. And I'd wake up the next morning to find the garage open. I'm like, boys, someone's gonna break in, all these kinds of things. Sure enough, we rummage around the garage, and someone hears something move, and we move something, and there again, this baby possum just sitting there screaming. I mean, it is as close as you're gonna come to a Jesus demonic encounter is a baby possum hissing at you. It is the scariest thing in the world. We have since learned that we must live expectantly. We must be faithful and ready with the expectation that a baby possum is gonna come into our life at any time. And so we are vigilant about locking up our house. We actually got a dog. In fact, if you drive past our house, often you'll still see, we like to crack open our garage, but you will see Maverick. His head is sticking out of the garage, just kind of watching everyone go by. If anything's gonna come in the garage, it must go past Maverick. Well, this morning we're going to talk a little bit about Jesus and his return. And it's interesting that in the idea when Jesus speaks of his return, what he asks us to think about is to be expectant and to be ready. The thing that comes up over and over again in his many parables, really, if you could boil it down to two words, is this: be ready. Be ready. When Jesus speaks about his coming, expect my coming, be ready. These are the things. In fact, there's a phrase we're gonna see. It won't show up this way, but the translation is gird up your loins. Okay, it's not something that we typically say a lot. It will say be dressed and ready for service. It's the idea of being constantly ready. It's this constant state. Be ready and stay ready. My prayers were answered this week. Major League Baseball is back. And I'm hoping gird up your loins becomes one of the team's hashtags, right? This Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim baseball, hashtag gird up your loins. We're going to the playoffs, right? Like this idea of we're ready and we will stay ready. Do you think that will catch? Okay, make it work, Justin. I want to see gird up your loins trending on Twitter, please. Okay, we're losing it, so let's get to a big idea. Big idea today. Jesus wants to find us faithful when he returns. He wants to find us faithful when he returns. So as we look at Jesus speaking about what does it mean to live in my ways, it is live expectantly and be ready when I come. Now, the followers of Jesus were to prepare themselves for his return by living in a way that would honor him, by living obediently, by living with a sense of expectancy. And what we see ultimately is when the Bible speaks of living with a sense of expectancy, what goes with that is faithfulness. Faithfulness. So let me invite you to turn to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, as we've been listening to Luke speak, tell us about the ways of Jesus. We're trying to draw special attention to some of those challenging teachings. Page 1044, Bible's in front of you. Some of the challenging teachings that Jesus gives us. What does it look like to live in his ways? And Jesus is gonna explain, how do you live faithfully, expectantly, knowing that I'm going to return? Now, one of the things that he's just finished doing is he's been teaching about money and wealth. He's been encouraging people to think about what has been entrusted to you. He's been challenging the crowds to not get so preoccupied with worldly wealth, but to think about kingdom treasures. Think in this way. And he's challenged them, as we see multiple times in the Gospels, this theme comes up where Jesus says, don't worry about these things. Look, you spend so much of your time, so many of your days worrying about these things. Don't worry about these. Trust that God will take care of you. And so seek first instead God's kingdom, and he will take care of the other things. Be generous. It gives you freedom then to be generous, to care for the poor. And so he's invited them to think about heavenly treasures. So then he gets to verse 35 and he says this: be dressed, ready for service. There it is. Gird up your loins and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It'll be good for those servants whose masters find them watching when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will dress himself to serve. We'll have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come in an hour when you do not expect him. Now, Peter asked, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? Jesus answers his question with another parable. He says, who then is the faithful, wise manager whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give their food allowance at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant says to himself, my master's taken a long time in coming, and then begins to beat the other servants, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He'll cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know, and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. Now, these two stories bring us to a point of kind of seeing these patterns of how we are to prepare ourselves, how we are to be found ready, how we are to be found faithful. So let me give you just a couple quick observations. If it moves too fast, as Brandon mentioned, we have a spot on the app called Notes and Highlights. These are all on there. A couple quick observations. Number one, we see this: Jesus will return to the earth. He will return to the earth. And so what we see in verse 40 is this idea. He says that they are to seek first the kingdom. And he says, he's talking about how will it be when the Son of Man comes. Now that title it's a huge, it's one that Jesus uses for himself a number of times. But what's significant for us as we hear it is we have to hear it as they would have heard it. For them, Son of Man is a title found in Daniel chapter 7. So it's a prophecy that one day God is gonna send, the Ancient of Days is gonna send on the clouds one who will come and make all things right. When Jesus is using this title, he is using it for himself. They are hearing, he is using this title. He is saying that the one who Daniel prophesied about, he is saying he is that one. Now, Luke, as we're gonna go all the way up to Easter, Luke will continue to show the unique way in which Jesus is fulfilling and accomplishing, as we saw last week, he's accomplishing something. He's making his way to the cross. He's going to take away the power that sin and death and hell have over us. And then Luke ends with the resurrection. And then Luke has actually a second volume. The book of Acts is also written by Luke. And it picks up on the resurrection. And then at the end of chapter 1, what you see is that there is not just a resurrection, but there is what's called the Ascension. They're with Jesus and they're saying, well, now are you gonna do it? Are you gonna make everything right? And he says, look, it's not for you to know the days and times. He gives them a job, go be my witnesses into all the world. And then it says this, that he then was taken up. He ascends to the throne of God. He ascends into heaven. And if you thought it was a big deal to watch a dead man be alive again, imagine watching him just ascend into heaven. And so they're doing what we would do. They're staring, their eyes are open, their jaws are dropped, like they're taking this all in. And in that moment, angels speak to them and say, why are you staring into the heavens? The same way you saw him go, you will see him come. And so we find ourselves living in this in-between time. Jesus has ascended and Jesus will return. We are in this time. So how do we live in that time? Jesus says over and over again to live with expectation, to be ready, to be faithful when that day comes. He will return to the earth. But the second thing that we see in this is that no one will know when he's coming. No one will know. Verse 40, we see how important it is to be ready because He will come at an hour that you do not expect him. So think back about 10 years ago, you're driving down the freeway and you see this billboard and it says, save the date, return of Christ, May 21st, 2011. So you're like, oh man, I should probably pull out my day timer and write that in. Oh man, I've got a lunch appointment that day. I'm gonna have to figure out how to move that because when you see something like this, you can be almost pretty certain that's not when it's going to happen. This is part of what he's saying. He's saying that no one knows the days or time, but people have tried that. 1988, a guy wrote a book, 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Returning in 1988. Made a lot of money off the book. Obviously very wrong. He's written a number of books since then about other times in which he thinks Jesus is coming back. Jesus doesn't get preoccupied with that, does he? He's not trying to have you figure out all the kind of conspiracy theories to put it all together. He just says you won't know, so stay ready. Stay ready. After Easter, we're gonna look at the letters that Paul writes to the Thessalonians. In 1 Thessalonians 5, he writes this. He says, brothers and sisters, about times and dates, we do not need to write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. This is coming from what Jesus said. Look, if you knew when the thief was coming, you would be prepared, right? That's the point. You don't know. Wednesday, I walk out of my office. I walk past our north parking lot, turn, go in the other parking lot, go to my car. It's like 12:30. 25 minutes later, my wife walks out the same way. She sees her van there and she's like, who broke a bottle next to my van? In the 20 minutes between when I walked out and when she walked out, someone had drove in our church parking lot, bashed her window in, took a bag that was in the back seat of her car and left and charged up $700 at Target and then tried to do at Party City as well. The police took care of all that kind of stuff. But the whole point is, right, if I would have known in those 20 minutes that that's when the guy was coming, I would have been hiding in the bushes, or actually I would have been Justin hiding in the bushes, right? Because it'd be a little safer for me, right? The whole point is you don't know, so you live with some sense of anticipation. You try to do the things that will help you be ready. There was a Liverpool newspaper story, it's kind of fascinating story. There was a couple had their car stolen. A couple days later, the car gets returned. Note in the car of apology. We're so sorry. We know we caused you a lot of inconvenience. Please accept our apology, and here are 2 tickets to the theater. We hope you'll forgive us. Well, the couple looked at the car. They realized, no, I guess really no harm has been done. So they accepted the apology. They took the tickets. They went to the show. While they were at the show, the house got broken into by the thieves, right? So that's the point of the whole thing. And some of you are like, how dare they? Right? That's the point Jesus is trying to make. You don't know, so you stay ready. See, here's the thing. Some will be ready and they will be blessed. Some will be ready and be blessed. Jesus says this multiple times in these 2 stories that when the master ultimately comes, the ones that are ready are blessed. The word blessed is used multiple times. It will be good is often how it is said. Multiple times, they are blessed. Verse 43, if the master returns and finds the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns. Promotion, blessing. If you're ready, it is a wonderful, good thing. But also notice this, that some will not be ready and be disciplined. Now, if it would be easier as a preacher to avoid verses 45 to 48. We could just have ended at 44 and that would have been close enough, but it's important that we do read verses 45 to 48. Now, Jesus is obviously, he's speaking with incredible strength and impact. Now, we can try to soften these words, but it's very important that we understand how important it is. He's pulling no punches. He is not trying to water down anything. In fact, the translation we have here really captures the force that was intended when he spoke about these things. Now, the hard thing is, as he's trying to explain, the key idea is there will be those who have been entrusted or those who should be ready who are not ready. And there's discipline that comes. And in that, what we see is there's a lot of questions on, well, wait a second, this person's in the household. There's someone the master trusted, and then they go through all this discipline, try to figure out, well, how does that play out? Are you losing your salvation? Are you going to purgatory? Like, what's happening here? As most scholars, though, have come to the conclusion, it seems to be that what you see here is someone who's kind of going through the motions, that there isn't really, it's not authentic of who they are in the household. It's someone who's pretending that they are willing to do these things, because you see the true nature of this person once the opportunity is presented. And the application then for us in the church is simply this. It's easy to go through the motions of church, right? To show up on a Sunday or Wednesday, to maybe give some offerings or go through motions, but really never have your heart into it. What Jesus wants from us is faith. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to put our belief in him. Belief, faith, trust. These are all synonymous. The idea of, no, just trust me. And trust and faith show itself in faithfulness. How do you know you have faith? Well, it plays itself out with faithfulness. Now, certainly what we see is some of the servants can make mistakes along the way, and there's discipline that goes, but the one ultimately who's pretending and playing the game, we see that this is a very sobering part of the passage. Be ready. Part of his point is this: you cannot cram for that day. If you're thinking that someday I'll just kind of figure things out and I'll get myself all right with God, Jesus' warning to us in this passage is you don't know when that time will come. You cannot cram for something you don't know. Now, this passage it's filled with expectation, anticipation, and warning. How do we then respond to it? Let me give you two things I think can be helpful. The first thing is this, is that we are to live with joyful expectation of his return. We are to have joyful expectation. There are multiple places where Jesus he will be giving you sober judgment. But the thrust of this is about blessing and celebration and honor that comes. Do you remember being a kid at Christmas? Like, especially when you're young, you're just old enough to know what's going on and expect and anticipate it. Do you remember the first time as a kid you couldn't go to sleep? Because you were what you believed was coming was so good that you were filled with joy, right? This is what he's getting at. Now, compare that with the feeling you have about going to work or school tomorrow on an hour less sleep, right? A lot of you are like, oh man, tomorrow, I just pray tomorrow doesn't come. Like today, like you guys, I think you get special rewards in heaven for showing up on daylight savings time if you're live. But if you miss verse 37, you miss the most beautiful part of this whole passage. Okay, look again at verse 37, what he says. He says, it will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Now listen why. He says, truly, I tell you, he, the master, will dress himself to serve and will have them, the servants, recline at the table, and he's gonna wait on them. Do you see the twist? He turns the tables. He says, when I see you, when I find you in that place, I'm not gonna just congratulate you and tell you, go get me a beer and I'm gonna watch the game, right? He says, when I find you in that place, we're turning the tables. I'm having you come and sit and I'm throwing a party for you and I will serve you. And it's this incredible picture of the God that we have a life with. inviting us to celebrate with him. This is what is happening. The one who's coming on the clouds, the one who's given dominion and authority over all creation is going to serve you. See, this is part of I think when the psalmist says, who is man that you are mindful of him? That there are moments in which we understand God in his infinite greatness, Father, Son, Spirit, completely perfect in himself. Creates us not because he needs us, creates us because he wants us, because he wants to share himself with us, because he wants to share his glory with us, because he wants to share his life and his love with us. You have to hear the intent and heart of God towards you. What I want is a life with you now and forever. And I am so happy to throw a party in your honor. It's hard sometimes to read Revelation 21 and not get somewhat teary-eyed about it. That this reunion that is coming, the greatness of Jesus coming, and it's like this incredible wedding. And there's no more tears and no more pain and no more death. And we will be with him forever. It is a beautiful, beautiful picture. So how do you get ready with joyful anticipation? He says, you dress yourself with preparation, prepared for this. This is, the phrase of girding your loins really goes back, all the way back to the Exodus. They were told, be ready because God's gonna move. So dress yourselves like you're ready to go, right? You got everything packed and you're good to go. You got your running shoes, your hiking shoes on, because we're leaving tonight. And they don't know exactly how it's gonna happen, but they had to be ready to go at a moment's notice. And that phrase there, be dressed and ready for service, means to get ready and to stay ready. He says to keep your lamps burning. He talks about the master returning from a wedding feast. Wedding feast would take days, not hours. So he just didn't know when he would come. But traveling across the desert, particularly late at night, it's not like there's GPS, right? The directions are just go down that dirt road, and you get to the tumbleweed, make a left, right? How does the master find his way home in the pitch black? The lamps. They keep the lamps burning. As you notice, it's midnight, and the lamps are still burning. It's 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. The lamps are still burning. Why? Because the servants are ready and expected. We want you to find us. We want you to find, we are looking forward to you coming. We want to make sure you come here. You make it home safe. It says everything about the heart of the servants. In the parables, the faithful servants are expecting him to come, so they stay ready. This is what it means. This is our mission, right? That you would become an authentic follower of Jesus, that your life would be filled with obedience and worship and devotion. We believe, we have faith in him, and so in what we pray God sees in us is faithfulness. So the final thing I would just tell you is serve him faithfully. Serve him, serve others faithfully. This seems to be a part of what he's getting at, right? That the servants are doing what is being asked of them, and they're doing it faithfully. There's a great piece of wisdom for your life. Don't pursue success, pursue faithfulness. Oftentimes in our pursuit is success, we become very good at the wrong things. Be faithful, he says again and again. Stop worrying about measuring up. He says, have faith. So let me ask you as a response, where are you investing your time, your talents, your treasure? Right? How are you taking who God has made you? This is the role God has given you. How are you playing it out well, faithful? And notice how important it is that it's not just a personal thing, it's a corporate thing. It's how we're treating each other. How are you investing in other people? Is there a way in the next season of your life in which you can live with faithfulness. Caring, investing, building up those around you. Now, the world feels like a very big place. Where do I even start? So we always say this, invest in your 8 to 15. Invest in your 8 to 15. The idea of 8 to 15 from the Bible comes from this Greek word oikos, which means household. So in the Bible, multiple times, we see that someone has this amazing encounter with Jesus, and as a result, they go and tell their oikos. Or they and their entire oikos are baptized. It's their household. Now, we think of household as mom, dad, 2.5 kids, goldfish, and puppy. But for them, oikos was a larger group. It was extended family. It was people they worked with. It was a bigger network of people. And so we think, when we talk about this, we talk about a relational network. We say, if you paid attention, that there tends to be in your life in different seasons, somewhere around 8 to 15 people who you're just doing life with, who you sense God is inviting you to care for. And I love the words that Tom Mercer has been a mentor to me. He writes about this. He says this, we all have an oikos. Your oikos does not contain the same 8 to 15 people who make up mine, but it is that world, your world, that God wants to transform, to bring to himself through the one common denominator they all share, you. I thank God for a high school kid in my neighborhood, Jeff, who didn't give up on me, who cared for my family and invited me here to the Rock. I think of my sons and when they were in high school and how they would invite their friends from baseball or care for their friends on their baseball teams. I'm watching my daughter do this right now in high school with her volleyball team, her classmates. And it's interesting, at least at Beachpoint, our high school kids seem to get this really well. And for some of us, I think we outgrow it and we just think, well, I just don't have time. I'm really busy with this. But what if you just thought about that place? I'm not talking about the place you are, bringing them here. I'm just talking about being who God wants you to be wherever he has you. Caring for them. Only God can change the heart. But for you and for me, we choose to be faithful in whatever it is that he's asking. So just do that. Be faithful to pray, or to listen, or to take care of a burden, or to invite them here, maybe pay a bill. Just be faithful with what God asks you to do. So let's we close with the final song. Let this kind of guide your prayer, this question. If you knew Jesus was coming back soon, would you live differently? Right? He wants you to have that sense of expectancy. Repentance, it's a change of mind, it's a change of heart, it's a change of direction. He's saying, I really want you to be ready when I come. So how do we change our mind, change our heart, change our direction? Let's bow. Just in the quiet of this moment, have a moment between you and the Lord. God is in this place. You can speak to him. And if you feel like you're the one who's maybe been pretending, or maybe this is all new to you, you can speak to God. Be honest with God right now. You can ask him to forgive you. You can ask him for the strength you need. You can ask him to see things more clearly moving on. Take a moment, just pray with whatever seems to be on your heart right now. God knows those things, so say them. In just a moment, Sandra will lead us in the final song.